Tonight's guest is Matt. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here, Vic.
Well, it's great having you. Thank you for your time. Matt, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I currently am a workaholic. I have a few hobbies, and I do love hiking. Nothing extreme outdoors, but I do love the outdoors. Taking camping trips, hiking, and looking at beautiful natural scenery.
Well, it's great to hear you enjoy the outdoors so much. How was that love of the outdoors affected, though, after you had the encounter that you're going to tell us about tonight?
I would say it's been affected a good amount, but I don't let it hold me back. The only stipulation I put on myself would be nighttime outdoor activities. I haven't really went camping in a while. I am looking forward to doing that here later before it gets too cold. But, anytime I'm hiking and the sun starts setting, I don't waste any time to hurry up and head back. Anything in the daytime is good enough for me.
Does that mean that you can go into the woods by yourself during daylight hours without too much trouble?
Yes. I've always kind of hiked that way. I used to hike with my siblings, and they were, a little bit different. We all kind of went our own ways kind of thing. I used to take them hiking with me, but one of them likes more skateboarding, BMX bikes, and this is from a growing up standpoint. And, my other sibling, she's a girl, is my sister, so she didn't really care too much for the outdoors either. So eventually I just, even from a teenager, I just started going out hiking alone and got used to it. I'd walk with some earphones in. My mom would be like, keep one ear open at least so you are aware of your surroundings. You can at least hear what's going on. You're not too immersed in your music. And eventually, as I've grown, I've just kind of gotten used to that. Sometimes I even switch it up and use it as a workout, and I'll put ankle weights on, or maybe just a few pounds into a backpack and just enjoy the scenery. So, yeah.
That was really good advice your mother gave you. Even if you don't have Dogman in the area, you might have mountain lions or something else to deal with, wild hogs. So, yeah, that's always a good idea to do that. We're here to talk about your Dogman encounter, of course, Matt, but you've got a history of having encounters with other strange things as well. What more can you tell us about that?
Yes, Vic. I've, encountered some pretty off-the-wall things that just makes you sit there and say, we really are not alone. I've from a early, age, around like 10, 11, not necessarily puberty yet, but not a little kid where I'm 5 or 6. Old enough to know right from wrong, and old enough to know when I see something that is unnatural. Our house, our family house growing up, had recently gotten re-renovated, and everybody has a new beginning, a start. My brother, my sister, and we used to have a bunk bed. And when we were smaller, my sister would share, she would use the bottom one, me and my brother would share the top one. This is all when we were pretty small. But as we got older and the house was being renovated, took it about a year or two, but that's neither here nor there. When we got our own separate rooms for once, we didn't have beds. And so, I'm laying on the floor, bunch of blankets, kind of like a pallet, very comfy. And I was pretty much a wall sleeper, and I would sleep to the wall. Well, I had this feeling I could not go to sleep. And I was laying there. It was the first time being in this room, no furniture or anything quite yet, except for a lamp. And I had this feeling just over me, like I'm being watched. I'm like, there's no way, that can't be. So I flip over. I have a window that faces to the west and one that faces to the north. And the one that faces to the north is a small window compared to your average, size window that that's pretty large. Well, I look over and I see 2 red eyes. And that kind of like stunned or shocked me. I was kind of like eye locked with the thing. I tried to get details, but I was so in fear. It was like I was drawn into its eyes. And to remind you, I'm about 10 or 11 at this time. So again, old enough to know right from wrong, but still, I still consider 10 or 12 is still pretty young. I was petrified. I'm not even going to lie to you. I can't remember its form too well. It was, I won't say shapeless. It wasn't just like smoke, but it was solid black. Of course, it's in the middle of the night. And it was a humanoid figure. It had a head shape, but no facial description, no mouth, no ears, no eyebrows, no hair, none of that. And at the time, it took me, even from then, it was just hurry up, turned around over towards the wall. I finally was able to break off. And I can't remember, so I don't want to throw it in there, but I may or may not have turned back around, but I know myself when I was a kid, and I would have been too petrified to move to even turn around. But later on, as I got older, I realized, I'd always realized it, but I didn't stop to think about it. That's the second floor. And there is no platforms. It's just one solid straight wall. There's no bit of the roof, or shingles or anything to stand over there. So as I got older, it kind of got freakier. I was thinking, there's no way something was standing there. And the height that it was standing at, it wasn't look like it was just barely peeking into the window. It almost had like its, I would assume, a neck, but it was like it was looking down just slightly. And again, I know that sounds like, well, how could you tell? There's no facial description, but that's the message that I got from that. It wasn't barely reaching it. It had no, how can I say, physics or physical limitation on looking into the window at that time. So ever since then, I've always kind of had weird paranormal things from time to time. Not enough for me to live in fear, but I think enough to remind me that we are not alone, and it isn't just mankind, that we are just, the only species or only entities on this planet. I'll say that.
No, as you know now, there's a lot of other things out there besides us. And speaking of that encounter you just told us about, wow, poor guy, that's rough. When you're a kid, it's hard enough. Not to mention having an experience like that. I can only imagine. Your Dogman encounter happened in Oklahoma in the middle of the night. Are you aware of the fact that Oklahoma is a hot spot for Dogman encounters?
No, Vic. I did not know that. Growing up, and even as I got older, just, doing activities outdoors, I thought, it's Oklahoma. Yes, anybody in the state that anything's going on, paranormal or otherwise, it's always a different state. If it's paranormal, you're thinking Nevada or, the Mojave Desert or Appalachian, very far off, secluded kind of areas where you think, now that's someplace something weird would happen. I never considered Oklahoma would be the place for a hotspot for Dogman. I came across your show a few months ago, and I still kind of have a driving job, and I just love listening to it like I'm listening to a radio, and I just listen to episode after episode after episode, and so many of them, Oklahoma here or in this area, northeastern, and I'm like, wow, okay, Dogmen are sighted pretty much all over Oklahoma. So I'm sad that those people had to see it, but I'm kind of happy at the same time, reminded like, okay, I'm not just the one-off random, person that's seen a Dogman in the state of Oklahoma.
Well, as you know, Dogmen are seen all over, period. Yeah, they literally are all over the place, unfortunately. When we spoke about your Dogman encounter for the first time, I got the impression that the nightmares you suffered as a result of that encounter just might have been harder for you to deal with than the encounter itself. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, Vic. I would say that is an accurate assessment. When I had seen and had my encounter with the Dogman, it was very frightening. It was very scary. I mean, never seen, heard, or experienced any type of level of fear like that in my life. But at the same time, I kind of had how can I say, I just thought in my brain, if I avoid that spot, I'll be okay. But the nightmares and the feeling of being watched, even in other areas, was worse than the encounter itself. Not to take away from the encounter, but what persisted after that for a few months, yes, that was definitely unpleasant.
I figured that was the case. If you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest on one of my 2 Bigfoot shows, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know. All right, Matt, please tell us about your encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
All right, Vic. So I was driving in between two different towns. I was driving, leaving Cushing, going towards Bristow, about 2 in the morning. And the reason that I was out was for my job. I, at the time, had this job where I would travel from medical facility to medical facility, transferring different bodily fluids so that they could be tested. And one of the things or requirements for this job was it had to be drawn or collected really early in the morning so that they could get the results same day. So I was familiar with being out this late at night. This isn't a one-off occurrence. I just so happen to be out this night. I'm out every night, almost 7 days a week. And so I typically would take different highways. I'm familiar with back roads, and it's very beautiful when the sun does start coming up. You're going through a canopy area with trees, or even a wide open field with the sun coming in. It's very nice and relaxing for the most part. And at night, it can be relaxing, but you also have to be vigilant for anything that could happen, out on the road. Specifically, so I thought at the time, would just be deer crossing or anything like that. Tire drivers was the worst of your worries at that time. So I was driving from Cushing to Bristow, and typically the route that I would take required me to take the toll road. Well, I had put majority of my funding towards gas, and at the time I'm 18, 19 years old, and this is around the summertime of 2018. And so I didn't really think about other things like a toll pass, and so I didn't have any money to put towards a toll road or get in on toll. And I weighed my options, spend X amount of dollars on the toll, get there faster, or I can use this money on gas. It's going to make me last longer through the week, and I won't have to worry about running out of gas early and get in trouble with my job because I can't make it to the next site. So there was certain back roads that I've never heard of, never seen, kind of like the movie Wrong Turn. And I looked at it, and it was only a couple minutes difference, maybe about 10 minutes or so more. And I looked at the distance. All right, I'll do it. I've never been down this road, but I can do it. I'll make it. So I'm driving between Cushing and Bristol, trying to get to my next facility. It's about 2 in the morning. I'm about 5 miles in or so. And the terrain was pretty flat for the most part, but it was windy here and there. So it was flat and straight, but windy, kind of like when a snake slivers and it moves. It doesn't just go in a straight path from A to B. And so at the time, I had a Dodge Challenger. So, I used to like to, here and there, go ahead and put some gas on it. I know, thinking young guy, Dodge Challenger, sports car. Yeah, okay. So I'm driving, and I'm not listening to radio, just kind of staying vigilant. Again, I just like to enjoy the scenery and also be vigilant. Sometimes I get calls for my job, so try to be watchful, listen for that kind of thing. Low beams on, no reason for me to have my high beams on. I could see pretty well. And this road would have somewhat of a canopy for a few miles, so the trees would kind of lean over and touch each other above the freeway. It's a one way each direction, and so it would kind of bottleneck closer towards each town. So from Cushing, it was wide and open, and then it would narrow up, kind of going into that canopy, and here and out it would just have multiple little pastures off to your left or right. And this area, there is not a single street light, and there's not any houses. There's no houses. If there are, maybe there's a gravel road that would probably pour out and you go off for maybe a mile. This is the type of place where people think, if I don't want neighbors, then this is where you would typically want to go. And so there's no street lights, no turnoffs, no gas stations, nothing. Absolutely nothing. So when I say pitch dark, if you wanted to get out your car and turn your car off and look up at the sky at the stars, you could do that, and you could see it perfectly fine. The light pollution was basically zero. And so I'm driving. It had one of those pastures, canopy and then pasture. And for some reason, I'm looking, I've done this before. The moon's out pretty well. I don't remember if it was a full moon, but for the most part, it probably was close to, because the moonlight was, excellent. Either my eyesight was really good at that time, or it was just very bright just off the moonlight alone. And that was pretty much the only light other than my low beams from my car. And, at this point, again, I drive at night. I'm used to looking off and looking at fields every now and then and say, wow, that's a big property. And I look over to my right just slightly, and, my brain isn't really triggered at the moment. I'm looking, and the moonlight hits the trees. You can see a silhouette of a tree. It's black, it's dark, and it looks like a tree. And the fields, though, with like weed or grass or anything like that, like any kind of agriculture, kind of comes off as white, so to say. The daytime looks gold when the sun hits it, but at night when the moonlight hits, it's kind of silver color looking. So you could tell light, and then you can see the trees dark. Well, I look out to my right, and I'm passing just one of these ordinary pastures, and I see something. And for some reason, most times I'm just blow it off like, whatever. But I kept thinking about it as I'm approaching, doing probably, this is about a 60, again, very slow highway. It's one way. But since it's night, I try to be cautious. And it's also, like I said, for every now and then, it would curve, it would wind here and there, left, right, left, right. So I didn't want to go too fast and get into any type of trouble or getting off the road or losing traction. And so out of my curiosity, I slowed just a little bit, not much, probably drop it down to about 50 or so, just a little bit above 50. And the way the road lined up right next to this pasture, I was just coming out of one of those winds. And I'm looking, and my brain's thinking, what is this? Is that a scarecrow? Or it's too short for a tree, and it's too tall for a person. And it's not close or even remotely next to the tree line, and it's not in the dead center of the field, so it's not a scarecrow. And I've seen them, but typically that's kind of phased out. That's neither here nor there. And I looked in the right as I'm thinking this, as I'm about to, my hands are on the wheel, and I'm about to say, whatever. That wind had ended, and it was my headlights kind of went out just a tad bit into the field. And it caught this thing's attention, and it swung around. It swiveled. So it was facing the tree line, like it was looking for something or watching something in the tree line. But it was standing in the middle field, and it swung around to the right, and it how can I say, like its upper torso, everything swung like it was on a swivel. Left arm, right arm, torso, head, everything faced right, but its legs were still facing the tree line. Just off the way that it moved, it didn't make a full direction. It swung around and looked dead into my soul. It didn't feel like it was looking at my car. It didn't feel like it was looking at something unfamiliar. It locked in with my eyes. And it felt like I was being looked through. It did not feel like I was spotted or being watched. No, it felt like it looked through me. It was trying to get me to acknowledge that I see you, and I know that you can see me, and I want you to know that I can see you in that thing or car. They know what that is. I'm pretty sure they know a lot of things. And the moment I saw it, it was like a trigger in my body that everything was calm just a second ago. And the next second after seeing this, I felt instant dread and fear. Like my bones, like my body, kind of when you're overcoming a fever and you're fighting a fever, and your bones kind of hurt and they're sore. I wouldn't say I was in pain or sore, but I could feel the fear in my bones. I don't know if you could say the word trembling, but just trying to give myself description there, I could feel it in my bones. It felt primal. I know it's going to sound maybe a little dumb for a lack of better terms, but maybe this is what cavemen felt like when an apex predator, like when a T-Rex was around and you're about to get eaten. I felt like this was something Very, very bad, extremely bad. I've gotten in trouble at work, and it's not like the same trouble when you get in trouble with your parents when you're growing up, and you're in trouble, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna talk to you when you get home." It wasn't that kind of fear. You know how to handle that. This was something that was so beyond me that I was stunned for a second, and not stunned to the point where I'm slamming on the brakes. Mind you, this has taken place within about 5 to 10 seconds. But all this is going, overclocking in my brain at a rapid pace. And the moment that I could kind of finish that second, that thought in those few seconds, as I'm passing it, I could not blow this off as, oh, well, maybe it's like a deer or something. It's eye shine. No, the eyes still glowed after my car had lined up after the kind of in and out, the weave in and out on the road. Its eyes were an orange, like a gold color, kind of like when you look at sap or how can I say this? Like you have those LEDs and you're charging something and have green, amber, and red. It was that exact amber glow, like LED eyes or something. And they were bright. It wasn't dim. It wasn't eye shine. It glowed. And the moment that my car straightened up on the road, it bolted to the tree line. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I felt in trouble like it was going to come for me directly. You would think the quickest point is from A to B. I thought it was just going to charge me, and that was it. No, it bolted to the tree line. And it was so fluid when I saw it, because when I saw this, I was still freaked out. I didn't just immediately look at the road and not look at it anymore. I was still thinking in my head, oh my Lord, what is that? I've never seen anything like this before in my entire life, and I'm freaking out. It bolted to the tree line, and how can I put it? When joggers run or we run, or even if you look at a car AC, we know how motion looks like or what physics is and how something should look, or how can I say, like, lack of a better term again, but feng shui. How does something move to get to A to B? In the movies, and you see like the ghosts, their kind of feet kind of lift up and it's just one fluid motion, or like Magneto and he lifts himself up and he just floats to you fluidly. It had that, but it was still making contact with the ground. I could see its legs moving, but it was so fluid. Now, I'm in the car, my windows are rolled up. I didn't necessarily hear it, like if there was pounding or stomping or anything like that. But again, the way that it moved, even with my windows down, how fast that moved, I probably wouldn't have heard much anyways, based on how fast it was. And it went into the tree line. At this moment, I felt like, it's on. I got to get out of here right now. And I'm a younger guy again, so I've played around with my Dodge Challenger. I know the ins and outs of this car. I've had it for a few years now. I know my limits, and I've banged some corners, not necessarily like went off the curb. And I know when it's gonna lose traction and when is to slow down, and what I need to do to keep myself on the road. I'll just keep it at that. So I floor it out, and I go from this 50 to 60. Now, like I said, I just got out of a wind, so the road's going to be straight for maybe a mile or two before it gets windy again. I floor it, and I'm thinking, I'm going to leave this thing in the dust. If it's some kind of dog or something like that, I'm out of here. And I still I felt like, kind of like a spiritual tether. I don't know. It was so dark that I think when I saw it, it knew that I couldn't see it, and maybe it knows our deepest fear, or what we try to ignore. And it for some reason in my body, I kept relaying that I could feel it off to my right, and I could feel it pacing with my car, because something was right with the same speed, around 60 and 65. And I'm trying to crawl up to 70, but again, I know at this point I'm approaching near the end of my mile. It's about to get windy again. They have signs that let you know, hey, slow down. It's about to be a wind here. And in my head, I'm like, I want to slow down for safety reasons, but I'm thinking in my head, if I get off track, if I lose any traction, or it's one of those areas now where I just left the pasture and the canopy. If I get off not even 2 feet, 3 feet, I'm going to hit a tree. Or worse, even if I go off traction just a little bit, if I can't get my tire, the car sits so low, if I can't get it back, it's gonna, veer off to the side. And I don't that those precious seconds I can't afford to stick around any longer than I already have. And I could feel it getting closer to me. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt it watching me the entire time. I'm going 60 in it, and I just make it out of the first line. I floor it again. I get up to 70. This thing is keeping pace. And at 70, I realized it doesn't matter how fast I go, I'm not going to be able to speed my way out of this. I have to get out of this area now and get to some kind of civilization, something, get into an open area where I can actually get eyes on it. And there was a point where I said, well, at least I can't see it. It's like it was reading my mind or something. I was like, at least I can't physically see its face. And I felt like the distance, I felt that gap close even more. Like it was looking through my passenger window. And then my peripheral vision, I keep my eyes on the road because, again, I said, if I take my eyes off for even a second, 2 seconds, or even just half a second, and I'm not paying attention, I'm going to veer off, and I'm definitely cooked at that point. And I could feel its... I'm going off peripheral, so I can't say I had pupils on, looking. I looked over to my right, but I could see it come up, and all the while doing 60, 65. It's not a dead stop. It came up to the passenger side window, and it looked, and kind of like when a person's angry, your eyebrows kind of bowing, that upset look. It looked like that, and it raised its upper lip, like when you see like when a dog gets mad, but they're not off crazy mad. They're like a well-trained dog. Like as you approach maybe somebody's your friend's house growing up, or you approach a house or something that's being guarded, the dog gets off of its legs and it stands up and it slowly curls its lip up, that it's not playing. And as you get closer, it starts to growl and show even more teeth. It did that. It lifted its lips as high, and I could tell even in my peripheral, those teeth were sharp. And I kind of got the jitters or a little bit of a shake, just kind of thinking about that. But it let me know. And then one swift motion went right back into the tree line and start pacing me. I knew, at this point, I already knew it before, but I cannot stop for anything. I have to be cautious. I hope I wasn't sure if it was trying to pace me so it could get in front of me and jump out of my car, or if it was just going to go head on through my passenger window now that it's trying to let itself be known. And that didn't happen until I thought, oh, well, it's dark, but, I try to be one of those skeptical people. I didn't really see what it was. I can't really say what it was. I know I saw the glowing eyes, but it can't be what I think it is. I'd already thought it when I saw it, but I thought werewolf. And it's like it came up to my window to confirm, like, no, you saw me. I am now I know the term Dogman, but I'm a Dogman, and I saw you, and I want you to feel pure dread. I felt hated. Even though I didn't do anything, I felt hated and ugly and everything that you could feel. That's a horrible feeling. So you got happiness, joy. I felt the opposite. Depressed, hopeless, that no matter what I do, I'm in trouble. I'm in serious trouble. And I felt the fear worse of imminent death. I can't explain it. I felt literal death. And even though I was living, still drawing breath, I felt like I was dead. And I'm just about almost out of the scenario. I'm almost out of my situation. The face encounter happened. Well, I'm about halfway through. I still have a few more wines to get through, a few more straight spots. And I'm flooring it, and I'm trying to get out of here. And, it wasn't really hot. I'm sweating. My body is hot. I can't, smell anything. So there's no smell or no hearing anything, but it was so fluid. And in my brain, I kept thinking, there's trees. How is it waving out? How is this thing not slowing down for even a second? I like I said, I've been hiking. How can it maneuver? But at the same time, I'm thinking, no, Matt, stay focused. Eyes on the road. And I got through the last weave, and I said, okay, thank God, I can smash floor it. And because I was looking, I've already seen, I know, because it says that the town named Bristow coming up, population. And I know there's a bridge at the end. I floored. At this point, I'm doing 80, but this is one of those highway roads that pours off into like a main road there. So there is a street light. So I said, I don't care how I'm going to have to do it. If I'm going to throw it in neutral and slam on the brake, but I get all the way up to 80. And right as the last, I'd say like 5 seconds, I don't know, this thing's speed's limit. But after I broke almost up to that 80, 90 barrier, slowed down a little bit, but that's only because as soon as where it said city limit, there was maybe like a, what was it off to the right? It had tanks on it. I don't know if it was a water filtration system or maybe some kind of gas vacuum pump thing, or maybe septic pump company that had a few pump trucks there. But as soon as I hit that, because I was at the edge of the city limits, it was like dread, the fear, the feeling like I was going to die. All that went away. I still felt anxietized because I'm still thinking that was a natural feeling. All the other feelings were unnatural. It was relief, but also still heavily scared and anxietized, anxiety. I didn't feel like I was being chased, but I still had that looking over my shoulder, like head on a swivel, left, right, where could it be? Now there's lights in this town. Again, it's a tiny town, but I mean, it's still a town. It has lights and, a few stores that even though they're closed, they have their lights out on the front. And I get to my medical facility. I draw the blood that I need to draw and collect my other samples that I need to get while I'm there. And I went my other way. Now in my head, I'm still the whole night, I'm doing my job, and it's kind of like when you're dealing with something serious in your life, you go to work and you kind of go on autopilot. You're doing a job, but you've done this job so long that you can do it with your eyes closed, figuratively speaking, and I'm thinking, what was that? What did I just see? Hold on. The story, mom and dad, parents tell when they're growing up, or what you see on cartoons as kids like Scooby-Doo, like, no, werewolves are real. And then I beg the question, oh my goodness gracious, what else is real? Aliens or Bigfoot, paranormal stuff. Now, like I said, as a kid, I've seen some stuff, so I know about that. But this opened up a whole new world to me that we are not alone. The main thing that we've advanced in is lights. Being able to have light and dark and light up areas, and we cluster together. So that was my initial encounter with the Dogman, and it kind of goes on from there. That was night one. So the nightmares, those began shortly after I had the other physical encounters. Some of them were in between. Once I had seen the Dogman, it was like was locked onto, and maybe not locked onto like what other people say that they were followed home. I thank the Lord I wasn't followed back to my house, but kind of like a spiritual or personally locked onto. It didn't matter where I would go. I started having, nightmares, followed with some other physical encounters, or at least believed to be physical. I still had to travel down this road for the next 3 or 4 nights or so, just because I had already allocated all my money towards gas, nothing for the toll. And the times that I would sleep, I couldn't sleep well. It was like I would hear things, and it wasn't just when you have a nightmare where, I'm lost or irrational type of things that don't make sense, but you're like, I was scared of that. That was a nightmare. No, these things were like people calling out from the dead, or what I perceive as, hell. and they didn't call me by name, but I would take little cat naps in between my routes. Again, this all in the middle of the night, and sometimes I get to a site an hour early or 30 minutes early because the predicted samples I needed from the previous site were either half or even half of that half. So I didn't spend nearly as much time as I needed to do at that site versus my next site. So I still would use majority of that spare time to go into the site and get that one done early. But I'd also give a little time back to myself and take little cat naps, 5-10 minute naps. And in these naps, felt like eternity. I had one where people were calling out to me and crying. And it was like I was somewhere, I couldn't see anything. This is all just audible. And they said, they're like wailing, sad, kind of like that, when people think they hear a ghost. And it was like, not joyous, but like they had found a hope or something. And they're like, oh, there he is. There is help us, help us. And it built up from a well to a literal scream. And there was 5 or 6 of them that I almost had that jolt when you wake up, or a heart attack, the where you shoot up and you're in a 90, degree angle for your legs to your back. And I cried a little bit when I heard that. I was still trying to piece together what had just happened the night before, but was that hell, or what was that? Who am I hearing? Who are these people? And those were spirits. Am I being toyed with? Is this an illusion, or am I really just freaked out by this whole scenario? I'm having nightmares. And I had some where because I started getting less and less sleep from this, because I was getting to the point where, almost like in the Freddy Krueger movies, I didn't want to sleep. So it caused me to be even more tired on the road. And there were times where, I had a mini dream that I was driving down the same road. And I looked up just slightly, and there was a cloud, and it was so low. And it was a skeleton, not a skeleton, just a skull. Just like you see in any skeletal, it was a human skull, but it was a shape of the skull. Let me say that. And the interpretation I got from the dream was death looming over me. And I looked at that, and I looked down the road. Now, before I could see or recognize was in the road, I woke up from that dream. And I said, oh, what am I dealing with? What is all of this? And the only place I felt safe to sleep was at home with, my girlfriend when she was off shift. It always felt better to have somebody with me. But the nightmares went on, and there was times where I'd have dreams. I think they became sleep paralysis, when your eyes kind of open up just slightly, and I'd sleep and I'd slump in my car, lean my car seat back before going to my next site. And, you're looking at your passenger side where the passenger feet would be at. Well, I would sometimes put my lab bags down there. There were times where I'd put it in my passenger seat. Sometimes I didn't always put them in the bottom. And there was nothing there. And I thought I saw a pale child sitting crisscross applesauce with the biggest eyes. And my heart started pounding because I can't move and I can't wake up. And I woke up, and that's where you wake. You're almost, I won't say hyperventilating, but I turned on I turned the car on. I put all the lights in, the interior lights, and I looked down, and it would be enough space for something small like that, but why? Why were you sitting there just staring at me? And I felt like I was being just watched. Not necessarily by the spiritual side of things, but like I would get out and I'd be walking to the nursing homes. I wanted to stay away from any dark vegetation. If it didn't have lights, I will park on the other side of the building if I have to. And if this is a mandatory locked door and I have to go through this specific door for security reasons, I'm fast-paced walking. I don't care if I look crazy. I'm going to hurry up and get in here. Because again, most of my work is at night. And in Oklahoma, and specifically these small towns, there's only maybe like a mile, 2, or maybe 5 mile radius before you're right back into the open fields and open woods. Or, even if it's own property, we're talking acres so big that, yeah, there's a house on it, but it might be so many acres due that way or this way, to where if a dogman or something wanted to lurk and creep around undetected and free and not be watched, this is the state. This would be the area to do it. And I still had to take this road. There's a few other counters, not necessarily Dogman. And again, in my brain, I was thinking werewolf. I wasn't sure of anything. I started asking around at nursing homes without trying to look like a madman. Have you, ever seen anything in the area, or is there, anything weird in the area? Like, well, we get all kinds of weird stuff. They're more talking about like just weird people. I was like, no, have you ever like seen anything weird out at night in the fields? And they're like, oh, ask so and so. And I'd go over to that nurse or this medical person, and they're like, oh, well, describe a little bit more. And I describe it, and they're like, oh, you're talking about this. And some of them will look upset that I even asked. Some of them look like they'll tell me, but again, it looked like I won't say irritability, but that, hey, I'm telling you this, but don't ever ask me again. And they would say skinwalker or some type of shapeshifter of some type. And, and so I kind of rolled with that, but I was like, I really think it was a werewolf. So the next few nights, I'm driving, and I'm hyper vigilant now. I'm looking left and right, and I said, okay, I'm gonna on the straight parts, I'm gonna speed through, and on the curves, I'm gonna slow down just a little bit and speed through, and I'm just gonna be cautious. And I said, when I approach that area that I saw it, I'm going to be hyper vigilant, keep my eyes on the road. And so I'm driving, and then like about halfway through. So the initial part of the story happened around somewhere 5, 6, 7 miles in. Nothing happened. I didn't feel any bad feelings, any weird vibes. All I saw was just dark woods, then open field and dark woods and open field. And I said, you know what? There's nothing to worry about. And I see a guy in a kind of like what you see with a mechanic or a trash man. They have the navy blue jumper, and they have like the green with the silver in the middle, reflectors on the arms and the legs. And something felt in my body, not scary wise, to slow down and help this person, or slow down and check on him. Because, it's in the middle of the woods. He looks, I won't say lost, he's walking the opposite direction. So he's walking, like if he was driving a car, he'd be going the other way. And so, he sticks out his thumb like the usual hitchhiker thing to do. But I couldn't see his face. His head was tilted down. And I looked at the right, or the what would be his right side of his chest, left for me. Because, everybody knows those kind of generic, classic uniforms. They have the name tag sewn into it. There was no name tag on it. There's nothing there. And I looked, and I kind of got more of a uncanny, or not scary, but creepy feeling. And as I looked, I slowed down just a little bit, and he had a ball cap on, average ball cap. It wasn't anything significant. It might have been your camper camo color. And he smirked. Left side of the face just plain, but the right side smirked. And I thought, what a weird thing to do as a hitchhiker. And I floored it out. I didn't give it any thought that, hey, this is the same road that I saw that thing. I didn't ask in the aspect of, hey, I don't want this guy walking around here with this thing out here. But after that, I was like, oh, maybe it's gone. He's going to deal with himself. That's weird to smirk at me like that. I floored out of there. Rest of the way out, the other half of it, nothing. I was like, okay, I made it. I didn't see an hitchhiker. Threw that out in the back of my mind because I'm still dealing with these nightmares. So seeing that guy was the least of my problems at the time. Go home, rinse, repeat, sleep, eat, get up, go to work, do my other sites, fear-free. And I'm like, oh man, okay, I gotta go third night in a row. Nothing happened last night other than that guy. I should be fine. And I drive again most of the way, and I've already passed the area where I saw the Dogman, and a little bit more than half at this point. And I'm driving, nothing, and I see something jump out in front of the road, maybe enough at the end of my headlights. It wasn't like, oh, something very far back where it just reflected. No, it jumped out in front of my headlights. I would say that it jumped out 30, 40 feet range. So it's close enough, and I have 20/20 vision, close enough for me to make out everything I'm seeing. First, it was a rabbit, and the rabbit just runs straight across. And then I see a coyote or a dog, and it stopped and looked at my car. It looked over and made eye contact. And then as that happened, a boar came out and chased the dog. I mean, I'm thinking in my head, did I just see what I saw? And the boar did the same thing. It stopped, looked me dead in my eyes. Now, the boar just kind of looked weird just because, you see them. They are out here. It is Oklahoma. It's not like super uncommon, but they're out here. So it wasn't like, I'm thinking, oh man, a supernatural boar. But its eyes looked a little funny. But I mean, it was right in front of my headlights. That was eye shine. And it went on and it kind of moved just a little bit and then stopped. And it sat a little bit. And so I revved my engine and it got up and then it walked away. And I was like, okay, this is weird. So, I don't floor it out. It's still animals. And I've heard the stories. You never hit a deer. You don't hit a goose. You don't hit any animals for no reason. For one, that's just inhumane. And second of all, their bones are dense. You're going to mess your car up. So, I make sure, get off the road, and I get up out of there and I get to my medical facility. I'm thinking, okay, made it through the third night unscathed. Nothing weird, just a couple wild animals. Then I go, home, rinse, repeat. I'm telling this all to my girlfriend at the time, too. And she's thinking she's had her own experiences and she is with me 100%. It wasn't super skeptical. Now, my coworkers, my supervisor, my manager, nobody believes me. Oh, Matt, you're just tired. Just go home and get some sleep. There was times where when I told them, I even cried when I got to office from the first site that they're thinking I'm just getting delusional from losing sleep. They're like, somebody take all his lab work and you process it for him. Matt, go home, get some sleep. I get some sleep, but no amount of sleep is going to fix what's going on. And not to mention the nightmares. More sleep just means more nightmares or longer nightmares. So that happened after the first night. I keep telling them, I'm putting in a request to change shifts. I don't want to work nights anymore. I'm getting freaked out by this now. This is the fourth night, and I'm about to get paid, and I said, I don't care how I'm going to do it. I'm going to get a freeway pass. I'm never going down this road ever again. This is because I have to do it, and that was dumb, and I'm thinking the whole time, beating myself up, if I just not bought this fast food, or if I had not bought this unneeded item, I could have got a pike pass and avoided this whole situation. And on the fourth night, I'm driving, and this is just before that field where I saw the Dogman. And again, I got that overwhelming feeling to help. I saw a lady, a woman, and the way the moonlight was, it was just like the first night. This all relatively happened in 4 days. So the moonlight's still relatively whatever cycle it's in. Again, I'm not looking at the moon every single day, but it was pretty much full around that time. So anyways, carry on. She was wearing a white sleeping gown. And at this time I went a lot slower than I did the other guy because I was getting ready to lean over to open the door, my passenger door. And I got a good enough look. And let me be frank. I said medical facilities, but I'm not going to explain too much further after that. But I work in the nursing homes, a few nursing homes. And so I generally see, what is the typical modern day sleeping gown, and this wasn't that. This was very old, like bonnet style old. This was like an 1800s style sleeping gown. It just looked so bland, a little ruffled up, maybe a little bit dirty, but not like they rolled in mud, but it just looked dated, very dated, and I could tell. And the hair was white and long, untamed, but not like so frizzled like a bush, but frizzy enough where it wasn't groomed or taken care of. And it poured all off the side of her head, down her neck, down her back, and come down to like stomach length, and it covered her front of her face. Now my brain correlated the last incident with the guy. Why are you covering your eyes? All I could see was the chin. And there was no smile or anything like that, and she didn't even raise out her thumb. This one moved. The other guy, he was walking a little bit. This one, instead of just walking like she's walking aside from me as I'm about to slow down, she turns to the direction of my car. Not that she was going to reach for the handle or anything, but like she was waiting to be invited in. And I almost reached open the door, and I jerked back. I said, wait a second. And I floored it out of there. And when I did that, the Dodge Challenger has a very thick bar in the back for the brake light. I love it. So even if your foot's not on the brake, it's a red, outer glow in your rear view mirror. And I didn't have any tint in that car. So I could see pretty much red within like 10-ish feet behind me. And as I drive off, and then super floored off, but I put some speed behind it, and I got back to my regular travel speed. And I looked, and I saw she walked out in the middle of the road and faced my car, just staring as facing my direction. I never saw the eyes. I never saw any facial details. After that, I was done with these encounters. I had finally, gotten paid the next day. On top of that, I don't like giving ultimatums at all. I'm a very nice guy. I will do what a company says. I also think about me. I'm a human being, yes, but I'm also a get it done kind of guy. But with this, I let them know. I said, hey, you don't take me off nights, I quit. And I made that abundant. There have been things I've been pushed over before with, but not with this. And they saw that I was serious, and they're like, okay, all right, we'll put you on 8 to 3. Said, sounds great. That works for me. And I switched shift. That was my last night shift working for this company. After that, things dissipated. The nightmares dissipated. No Dogman encounters. Nothing crazy after that. I start working days. I got used to sleeping at nights again. I felt a whole lot safer. I felt more relaxed. But those thoughts kept coming back. The screaming and the dreams. The glowing amber eyes in the field. The hitchhikers that there's, like I said, this is miles apart from end to end. No streetlights. You don't even have your flashlight on for a phone. The little things I would think about, red flags would come up, and I said, that was not a human being. Those weren't actual people. There's no properties within miles. So a lot I could actually focus and think about what digest what I had saw further down the road. But I made it a thing. Even in the daytime, I never went down that highway again. Not even for kicks and giggles or, memory. I don't ever want to go down that road ever again.
Can't say I blame you after all those wild experiences. Holy cow, you really went through it.
Yes, absolutely. I've had a more open mind since then to the whole, you watch alien movies or anything else, but I remind myself, we are not alone. We are not alone. And respect the woods. I've heard some of your other episodes. I don't know what I would do if I was like on foot hiking and I saw it, or I was walking and I saw it. I could not imagine the level of terror I would feel if I actually saw it and I heard it or smelt it. I probably would have sent me over the edge. I'm not even going to lie.
Well, after going through all those strange things, I think you deserve a lot of credit for just holding it together. Wow. If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. We're about at the hour mark here, Matt. I've got a lot of questions I want to ask you about these experiences, but we're up against it time-wise. Would you be willing to come back and do a part 2 where I could ask you all these questions?
Yes, I'd be available for a part 2, Vic.
Oh, great. Well, let's do that then. I'll just have you back on and I'll ask those questions in part 2 and we'll just do it that way then.
That sounds great, Vic. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. But having said that, thanks again so much for your time and have a great night.